and this drying up trend continues into Thursday and the start of Friday with rising temperatures.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, after 6 migrants tragically die in the Channel and a leaked memo warns the national emergency unfolding on our southern border could last 5 years, should Rishi Sunak take ironclad inspiration from a Tory great and take back genuine control of our borders?
When you cannot return illegal immigrants to their country of origin, then he is proposing international chaos.
I'll tell the PM it's time to show some steel and get on a wartime footing to solve the migrant crisis. That's in my digest next, and then my superstar panel weigh-in tonight. I'm joined by Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Dame Andrea Jenkins. Plus, Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie is uncancelled to call for a Greek and Aussie-style turn-back policy to stop the boats pouring across the Channel. Also coming up, after claims Meghan Markle advertised anti-anxiety wristwear by flashing it to paparazzi, would you be more or less likely to buy a product if it was marketed by the Duchess? Ingrid Stewart, Cara Kennedy and Joanna Jarjou do battle on the runaway royals' fading allure in the clash. And my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, are standing by to give their exclusive insight on that and more of the day's biggest royal stories, including a brewing parenting crisis in Montecito. Elsewhere, crime continues to skyrocket in lawless Britain. So why are woke police busy arresting a 16-year-old autistic girl to protect the feelings of a lesbian officer. Have Britain's forces lost the moral plot? Well, Neil Oliver is going to weigh in on that shocking story. Plus, as Vernon Kay and Ian Wright are criticised for this mealy-mouthed attempt to rally support for women's rights.
Think about the most precious of our species, of any species, that is the woman.
Is it time for high-profile men to have the balls to speak out against extreme gender ideology? We'll tackle that in the Media Buzz. Tomorrow's front pages on the way. You know we have them first, hot off the press, as always. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. The horrific and terrible and enraging events across the channel over the weekend show why Sunak must go on a war footing from the moment he returns from California. I'm going to explain why in my digest straight after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story on GB News tonight, police in Northern Ireland say they're confident that leaked data of officers and staff is in the hands of dissident Republicans. Earlier, Sinn Féin confirmed that a redacted version of the police data had been posted on a wall facing its Belfast offices, which it described as sinister. Last week, the details of 10,000 police officers and staff were published online by mistake. Chief Constable Simon Byrne said police are now operating under the assumption the data will be used to generate fear and uncertainty.
We are now confident that the workforce data set is in the hands of dissident Republicans, and it's therefore a planning assumption that they will use this list to generate fear and uncertainty, as well as intimidating or targeting officers and staff. I won't go into detail for operational reasons, but we are working round the clock to assess this risk and take measures to mitigate it.
A construction worker has died after being injured at Everton's new football stadium being built in Liverpool. Police say the 26-year-old man died in hospital earlier today following the incident at the construction site in Bramley-Moor Dock. The stadium's contractor says work has been suspended at the site until further notice, and Everton said everyone at the club was heartbroken. The government says it's trying to clarify when officials were made aware of the Legionella concerns on board the Bibby Stockholm accommodation barge. That's after Dorset Council said Home Office contractors were told traces of the bacteria were detected on the day asylum seekers boarded the barge. All 39 migrants were removed from the vessel on Friday. Downing Street says it expects them to return as soon as possible. Bidders for the high street retailer Wilko have been given until Wednesday to put forward offers to buy the firm. The general goods chain fell into administration last week, putting the future of its 400 stores and around 12,000 jobs at risk. It's understood administrators from PwC have set the deadline to try to secure a deal in a bid to prevent redundancies. And lastly, Network Rail has released video of dangerous behaviour at railway level crossings. If you're watching on TV, take a look at this CCTV compilation, which shows somebody doing press-ups on the line, dog walkers sitting their pets on the tracks for photographs, and children putting stones on the railway tracks too. Nearly 50 cases of misuse have been reported by train drivers or caught on CCTV in Worcestershire and the West Midlands so far this year. Network Rail is trying to raise awareness and discourage people from risking their lives on the railways. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News.
In a modern society where embracing small c values seems to be an anathema to even most MPs in the Conservative Party itself, it's sometimes appropriate to see how a giant of the movement would deal with a current crisis. So this weekend, we got the gift of guidance from the great Margaret Thatcher when a clip from Parliament of her speaking about Vietnamese boat people went viral and provided the most obvious clue as to why Rishi Sunak must toughen his approach if he has any hope of fulfilling his pledge to stop the boats.
With regard to the Vietnamese boat people, those who are genuine refugees, and that is determined again by the United Nations, will not be returned. Those who are illegal immigrants, will be returned. And it is customary international law for countries to receive their own immigrants back into their country. And if the right honourable gentleman is suggesting that we ever get to a position when you cannot return illegal immigrants to their country of origin, then he is proposing international chaos.
International chaos indeed. And that's exactly what the UK is contributing to by failing to secure our southern border, allowing people smuggling gangs to traffic tens of thousands a year of mainly economic migrants into our country. To hell with real refugees in need. And there was chaos and carnage in France this weekend. Amidst gunshots being fired at Dunkirk, dastardly people traffickers failed to give life jackets to Afghan migrants, 6 of whom later died in the Channel and windy conditions. That was on Saturday. Over 500 made the crossing that single day. And yet again, they were able to do so with absolutely no intervention from the French authorities, who, remember, we are paying £500 million to do the square root of F all to solve this growing national emergency. I mean, look at this. Look at this latest attempt by the French authorities. Pathetic. Critics rightly said it wouldn't stop a duck. So without bold and heroic action from Sunak, who would have to be prepared to become a pariah amidst his globalist mates, this situation is going to snowball. A bombshell government memo has revealed the migrant crisis is set to last for 5 more years, causing even chaos for local communities near sites where they are housed. You know I have been advocating for the UK to leave the ECHR for a very long time on this show. That's a position now argued for by Theresa May's former Chief of Staff, turned Tory election candidate Nick Timothy. He did so in today's Daily Telegraph. But that alone is not enough. There must be a turn-back policy too, like the Australian and Greek governments before us, which would see the UK safely return the boats to French waters. The time for negotiation with Macron, who has a political motivation to do anything but stop the boats, it's over. Over. Sunak needs to be on a wartime footing. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. Carol Malone, don't you just long to have Margaret Thatcher in charge of this crisis?
It was incredible, because everything she was saying there is kind of happening now. But, you know, it was always delusional of this government to depend on the French to help stop the migrants coming here. It's, you know, Rishi talks about, like, France has the same interests as Britain in stopping the migrants. Of course they don't. They can't wait to see the back of them. They want, you know, they don't want the traffickers on their territory, but they don't give a stuff what happens to the migrants. And you know, it's like and it's the height of stupidity to keep on paying them when we know they have no interest in removing the migrants. And I read somewhere today, someone said it's like having a dodgy builder and carrying on paying the money all of the time when they're not doing any of the work. And what I don't get, Dan, is that, you know, we're told we can't turn them back, and the French say this is very dangerous. It can't be more dangerous than crossing one of the busiest shipping channels in the world every day. But, you know, the French have been returning Italians for years. When migrants come across the Italian border into France, immediately France returns them. They do it on coaches, they do it on trains, they do it any which way, but they take between 80 and 100 back every, I can't remember if it's every week, but anyway, they're removing them as we speak. So if the French can remove the migrants, why can't we send them back to France?
Why can we not institute a turn-back policy? I've looked at loads of ways where it can be done. Sure, it would be very controversial, But look at Australia. Look at what Tony Abbott did.
Yes.
His turn-back policy quite literally stopped the boats. The Greek government has had a turn-back policy when it comes to boats from Turkey. Why can't we?
We should, Dan. You know, there's no excuse now. And like you said, we need a Thatcher now who's bold, who's got the balls to actually go and do this. Because I do think that, you know, if we're bold with this, other countries will start following suit.
Yeah.
Like we saw with Brexit. I
think it's true.
Yeah, and so...
They will admire us.
Oh, completely. And also, regarding the ECHR, I did my petition with the Conservative Post, and we've already got, like, over 30,000 signatures, and we're still pushing it out there. People want it.
Yeah.
This is such a big thing to the British public.
So are you saying we should campaign, that the Tories should campaign at the next election to leave the ECHR?
I think we should. We need a British Bill of Rights, personally.
Andrea know this better than us, but you know, I read last week there were at least 8 Tory cabinet ministers that were literally pushing Rishi to do this, and lots of other support from senior Tories that are pushing him to do it. So there's
but lots of wits who don't want to do it, including the Attorney General, which is a big issue.
8 cabinet ministers and a lot of senior, plus the nation, plus the rest.
But also, it's about the pull, isn't it? I mean, it infuriates me that people can come here illegally and
yes, it's the illegal
and get put up in hotels that we give them money. Illegal migrants. You know, we shouldn't be doing this. That creates a pull.
There's no deterrent.
That's why people are coming here.
But you know, France is actively, although we're paying them, they're actively working against us because
they don't want them in their country, do they?
But what they're doing is they are giving them safe passage until they get to the border of the British waters, and they know
the
then
French
that once they're
Navy
across,
literally shepherd them into British waters. It is outrageous. And they say, oh, that's because the people in the dinghy could provide a danger to our members of the Navy. Rubbish.
But we need a refund on this £500,000.
That emboldens refugees who might be scared to come across on the boat to come because they know they're going to get safe.
Benjamin Butterworth, Margaret Thatcher was right, wasn't she? This is contributing, our inability to protect our border is contributing to international chaos.
Well, look, I mean, 70% of refugees who come through this route are accepted as legal. So the idea that most of them are illegal refugees or illegal migrants, then that is not what the evidence says. It's 70% overall. Some nationalities, like Afghans, the ones that were affected by the awful tragedy at the weekend, over 90% of them are legally here. Now, you know, I think this idea of... Carol talks about what they do at the French-Italian border. I mean, I would imagine the actual practicalities of turning a boat round in the middle of the channel are extremely dangerous and impractical.
No more dangerous than coming across the entire channel.
I mean,
you get halfway across, why can't you go back across?
I think it's worth pointing out that, like a lot of ideas that are thrown up by people like you and Suella Braverman, they're completely impossible to implement.
Why is this?
You're not going to turn dinghies around in the middle of the channel.
Why
not possible.
Why not? Why
you absolutely can.
Well, think about how dangerous that is.
Think how dangerous
it
is.
And why would the dinghy just turn around?
It can be done safely. It can be done safely. In Australia, for example, the Navy would quite literally tow the boats back into safely. We're not talking about putting the people in the boats at danger. We're talking about safely depositing them back into French waters where the French Navy can take them back to the beach. This is not about putting lives at risk. You know what's putting lives at risk? Continuing to allow these dastardly, despicable people smuggling gangs to trade in humans.
The safe way to do it would be to assess their applications on the French side of the border.
Do you know what we also need to do?
Then you would save hundreds, if not thousands, of lives.
The international community should actually get together and look for a punishment for the traffickers as well. That's where we should actually come together and push back.
And also, Italy are taking, you know, tens of thousands, and I've taken tens of thousands. You know, you talked about the people dying. I think 1,800 migrants have died so far, and more will follow. And that's we've got
and those numbers are much higher. Because also, look at what's going on in Dunkirk and Calais. At the weekend, there were gunshots being fired. There were huge rows breaking up between different ethnic groups in the camp. The French do not have this under any control, and we need to stop relying on Macron.
Did you see it was Jonathan Miller today? He wrote a piece in one of the papers, and he just said he lives in France, and he said the French people cannot believe that we are paying this much money for such pathetic results. They think we're nuts.
Well, we're not getting any results, Carol.
Well, no.
I mean, literally, we're getting no results. They don't stop the dinghies going in,
but
and
the
they don't
French
turn
would
them
tell
back.
you they've stopped half, which is
we should use this money to strengthen our own borders. Actually,
completely, completely.
Totally. Dame Andrea Jenkins, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, my superstar panel, back very soon, and then with me all night. But coming up, after Arsenal legend Ian Wright gave Radio 2 listeners more than they bargained for when he launched this impassioned defence of women on Vernon Kay's show.
Think about the most precious of our species, of any species, that is the woman.
Was that thinly veiled dig at gender extremism and its role in the erasure of women's rights brave enough? Some activists say he should have gone further, and my superstar panel will give their very divided thoughts shortly. But up next, in the clash, after Meghan Markle was spotted appearing to advertise new anti-anxiety wristwear by flashing it to paparazzi, I want to know if you'd be more or less likely to buy a product if it was marketed by the Duchess of Sussex. We've got the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward, Meghan supporter and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and the Spectator's Royal Scoop getter Kara Kennedy doing battle on that next at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, coming up first, though, the clash. Now, she claims to have a newfound hatred of photographers, but Meghan Markle was conveniently snapped wearing a new health gadget on her wrist while walking in Montecito at the weekend. Her arm in the right place. This picture of Meghan wearing a $4 anxiety-busting wrist patch was quickly used in advertising by the health firm that made it, sparking hysteria online. GB News star Camilla Tominay was quick to point out the potentially strategic nature of that snap.
What I find interesting about this image is, I don't know if we can zoom in on it, but isn't it interesting how one of her sleeves is turned down to reveal this mental health disc and the other sleeve isn't?
How convenient indeed. So that nicely timed picture comes as Meghan considers relaunching her personal lifestyle blog, The Tig, which she abandoned in 2017 as she prepared to marry Harry. It could spark a much-needed commercial a commercial boost after she's lost that Spotify and Netflix deal. But what do you think? I want to know if you would be more likely to buy a product if it were marketed by Meghan. Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter to debate this now. The editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward, social commentator Joanna Jaju, and royal scoop getter at The Spectator, Cara Kennedy. So, Cara, I mean, come on. This wasn't a coincidence, was it?
No, Meghan Markle in particular is so meticulous with this stuff, with the details and placement and timing. The fact that as the paparazzi was right in front of her, snapping away, she tucked her hair behind her ear and revealed biosignal processing disc, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But it's certainly no accident. And it's also widely speculated that Meghan and Harry have some kind of deal with the paparazzi. I've written about this before.
So this is
Kind of call
Backgrid.
ahead and let them know.
It's this company called Backgrid. Is that right?
Yeah, a kind of. It's not for certain, but it seems to be that this company is kind of on call before they even get to places. I mean, typically the paparazzi will catch you coming out of somewhere because somebody has called them on you. Well, you've been in somewhere, but they seem to be snapped as soon as they walk in places. And also this kind of ties in with a brand, the pseudoscience, wellness, therapy stuff. So it seems that this is very intentional.
I mean, both Harry, Meghan and Backgrid, I think, have denied Ingrid any sort of formal relationship. But can you understand that given Meghan is about to dive back into the lifestyle world with a blog to compete with Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop, this feels very conveniently timed.
Well, it does. And also the other thing is that in California, they're having one of the hottest summers they've ever had. And there is Meghan wearing a sort of $1,000 plus coat, an Hermes scarf, very beautifully dressed. I mean, and she's got her shirt tucked into her belt, which is very on trend. And she looks amazing because Meghan is I think she's a really beautiful dresser, but she's obviously literally just been touched up before she walked out, and then to show off the little circlet on her wrist. I mean, it's just completely set up, and there's nothing wrong with that. But why does she think we're so idiotic as to not think that the whole thing is set up and that she's going to do the same with if indeed she does start it again with her blog, The Tig. And I don't think I would particularly take any notice of anything that Meghan proposed on that because, she's basically getting everything for free. And she's promoting her freebies, which is what she used to do before she met Harry.
Well, yeah, and by the way, it's what she wanted to do when she was within the royal family too, and she was horrified, mortified when the courtiers told her, oh, no, you've got to send all the stuff back. Joanna Jaju, though, you actually love this idea of Meghan bringing back the Tig. You think good commercial idea for her, you think it would work for her, and I presume you would be more likely to buy something if Meghan were promoting it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just as my fellow panelist just said, she dresses impeccably. She dresses very well. So why wouldn't I be influenced by her just like many other people around the world? But my big question is, even if she does have this, thing on her wrist. Why do you all care? Haven't you all been saying for months and months you want them to do their own thing, find their own way of making money, and stay away from the royal family? This is something that's clearly personal to her. It's a health and wellness thing, and she has it on her wrist. Even if, hypothetically, she was promoting this company, she has a Hermes scarf around her neck. Is she promoting that? She has a Maximara coat. Is she promoting that? I think it was just an excuse for the media to look at this thing that not everybody knows what it is. So they've focused on that. And now they're trying to pretend as if Meghan's doing this for some commercial thing. She hasn't even officially announced that she's going to relaunch the TIG. I hope that she does. And I hope that when she does, she doesn't get picked apart week on week on week by just being out and about running errands. And we all know how lucrative a picture of Meghan Markle is. Look at it. It's like front page everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. So why is it so hard to understand that paparazzi might actually be there waiting for her, because they know that it's a big payday whenever they get a picture of her coming out of the doctors or just going to the farmer's market?
Well, that's a good point, Cara. I'll let you answer that. But in the context of that, Cara, isn't it just a little bit hypocritical when they tell us all the time? I mean, Harry was literally doing it in Japan last week. Our whole life is about charity, when we know nothing's about charity now. It's all about making money. So maybe just be honest about that. Just admit what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, there is the point that we all kind of say, oh, well, I wouldn't buy this if Meghan Markle promoted it. But we are kind of all talking about biosignal processing.
Yeah, well, she's proved her point. I mean,
yesterday. So there is the point that however unpopular or popular or divisive she is a great marketing technique. And this is why
brands would want to be associated with her. Well, indeed. And Ingrid Stewart, I mean, maybe Joanna is completely right on this. Actually, has Meghan not just proved over the past 24 hours she can literally turn an unknown brand into the most talked about product in the world? And so if she is doing this in anticipation of launching the TIG, maybe some corporates that previously would have been a little bit worried about getting involved with the toxicity of the Sussexes might think again.
Well, yes, I think you're right. I mean, I think that Meghan's marketing ploys are extraordinary, and nothing she ever does is by chance. Everything that she does is organised and studied and set up by her PRs. And I go on about this, but it is sweltering in California.
Exactly. We know it's set up. We know it's set up.
Good for her. Good for her. But I'm going to go back on this, Dan, and say, I think she should, if she is really good at this, you can't take that away from her, but just drop the Duchess of Sussex and be Meghan Markle.
Just be Meghan. I think that's a really fair point. Joanna, final word to you. Can Meghan Markle be bigger than Gwyneth Paltrow in this space?
Absolutely. I think she already is by just being Meghan Markle and, you know, just the history and how much people talk about her. Obviously, Gwyneth Paltrow is successful in her own right, but I don't see, you know, paparazzi falling over themselves to get pictures of Gwyneth Paltrow. And yes, you know, we'd go on Paltrow's blog, but I don't think, you know.
OK, good stuff. No, I hear you all. Joanna Jaju, Ingrid Stewart, Cara Kennedy, love speaking to you. Thank you very much. Who do you agree with on this? Would you be more or less likely to buy a product marketed by Meghan? Skylar on Twitter writes, any company that gets Meghan to market their products can expect a great reduction in custom. No one wants to be associated with her and Harry anymore. From Joe, this is via the email, Meghan's proven herself a successful independent woman, so she has a strong brand. I'd be more likely to buy something she's affiliated with. And Glover writes, I'd be more likely to buy a Bud Light, stop for a coffee at Costa and complete a Disney marathon than I would buy anything bearing Meghan's name. Your verdict is in. It's overwhelming. 11% of you say you would be more likely to buy a product marketed by Meghan Markle. 89% of you say you would be less likely. Now, Calvin McKenzie and my Royal Masterminds lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier are still to come. First, though, the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Rain today, clearing overnight, a few showers following, but many places will be fine during Tuesday as low pressure moves into the North Sea, taking its weather fronts with it. However, One occluded feature is just providing some additional rainfall to the northeast of England through the night. Some damp weather continuing here. Eventually it becomes light to moderate rain. Showers across western areas, drier towards the southeast with some clear spells, but wherever you are, it's not going to be a cold night. It's 12 to 14 Celsius generally. And it will be a bright start to Tuesday, certainly across southern areas compared with Monday. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the remnants of the cloud and rain clearing from the northeast of England, southeast Scotland first thing, but by mid-morning that's all gone. And then the showers in the west tend to transfer eastwards through the day. The heaviest downpours will be across the central belt and the southern uplands, but elsewhere actually the showers becoming more scattered into the afternoon. A better chance of some sunshine in the south and with light winds feeling much more pleasant. Then we start off Wednesday with a few fog patches in the south and the west, a lot of cloud for Scotland and northeast England, and further showers develop, but most of these showers will be in the north, especially for Scotland, drier towards the south, and this drying up trend continues into Thursday and the start of Friday with rising temperatures.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, have the police lost the moral plot over the decision to arrest a 16-year-old autistic girl to protect the feelings of a lesbian officer? Our man in Stirling, Neil Oliver, weighs in on the worrying rise of Britain's morality police soon. But first, football legend Ian Wright surprised Radio 2 listeners with this emotional rallying cry for women's rights alongside Vernon Kay.
Think about the most precious of our species, of any species, that is the woman.
But after the pair faced criticism for not going far enough and calling out the trans lobby, is it time for high-profile men to have the balls to speak out in defence of women? My superstar panel return to debate that straight after the break.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Lady C and Phil D, Neil Oliver and Calvin McKenzie all on the way tonight. But first, my superstar panel return top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. And Radio 2 listeners got more than they bargained for when Arsenal legend Ian Wright used his guest appearance to make an emotional defence of women in what some are calling an obvious nod to the gender debate. So without specifically talking about the trans lobby, he told Green co-host Vernon Kay how women's rights needed to be protected before momentarily pausing to say his people would go crazy for bringing the subject up live on air. It's a fascinating listen.
And it just kind of reaffirmed everything what I think about the most precious of our species, of any species, that is the woman. And how much, with everything what's going on, Vernon, I'm not going to go into it because obviously my people will go crazy, what's happening to women in the world, in the whole world, and we mustn't forget. There's a world what they're growing up into, which makes me worry.
And it's crazy. It's 2023. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not 1902.
No.
You know, and we're still facing all the issues that you've mentioned off air, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's like, how are we as a society and how are we as humans going to move on and develop and progress if we're not learning from our mistakes?
Exactly.
So we know what they're saying without saying it, which sparked criticism for both Wrighty and Vernon for not being braver. Listen to this.
Talking about something that's happening to women, something's changing for women. It's really bad for women globally right now. What could that possibly be? What is the point of you waxing lyrical about how you love women and how you should treat us nice and blah, 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 and stuff you're saying off air? Quite frankly, it's not good enough. I'm sorry. Speak clear and say what's going on. Gender ideology is destroying women's rights.
Of course, you know, I believe BBC stars should never wade into politics, but if these two were going to put their head above the parapet, surely they should have been able to do it without the fear of being cancelled by their bosses and the usual woke mob. So, Carol Malone, this one has really divided opinion. Do you think they should have just had the balls, I'll say that ironically, to actually say women's spaces are being erased, the trans lobby is going too far?
I had no idea what Vernon Kay was talking. He could have been talking about anything there. I mean, I thought that was a real wimp out, that. I mean, I think Ian Wright was
scared, aren't they?
Well, I mean, but, you know, Vernon Kay, why would you expect him to come out with that kind of opinion? He's just got his job on Radio 2. He's not going to endanger that. He's not going to say anything. Ian Wright, I expected a bit more of. Do you remember Ian Wright came out very much in support of Gary Lineker?
Went on strike, in fact, to support Gary Lineker.
So I'd have expected a bit more of him, but...
And yet he's worried what his people are going to say.
But, you know, everyone has to speak out there, because if you don't, the only voice you're going to hear is the people from Stonewall who are trying to cancel women altogether. Women's rights don't matter to Stonewall. You know, they're trying to control what we think, what we say. They want to obliterate words like mother, and they want... what's the word they want to use for mother? Birth provider or something? Breastfeeding is chest feeding. It's outrageous that they're trying to... They're gaslighting women all of the time. So men like...
I know, but shouldn't they just say it, though, Andrea? Isn't that the point? Because it was so mealy-mouthed. As Carol says, lots of people didn't even understand what they were getting at.
Exactly. It was pointless saying it because it was lost on so many people.
Definitely. Completely lost.
And I just think it demonstrates how sad society has got, that these lobby groups are far more stronger and the silencing
freedom of speech in the UK is under attack. We all know it. We all know it. Benjamin Butterworth.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've reinvented your views, because you spent all that time complaining about Gary Lineker, who does the same job as Ian Wright.
I made it very clear in the
having
intro,
political opinions outside of his BBC work, and now you're sat there saying that Ian Wright should have been getting into one of the most contentious political debates while on BBC Radio 2.
No, but Gary Lineker gets away with it because he's got the same views as the majority of the BBC.
Yeah. No, you could hardly use the phrase "gets away with it." The fuss is never ending.
By the way,
point is,
Benjamin, can I just interrupt you for 1 second? I'll let you respond.
I'd rather you didn't.
But there is nothing controversial, by the way, about saying that a woman is an adult human female. There is nothing controversial about it. And the fact that you believe that is even a controversial view tells me how far the left have gone down the rabbit hole of denialism and delusion.
Well, I mean, look, controversy doesn't denote right or wrong. Controversy is by the reaction. And clearly,
what's a woman?
It would have been a very dangerous thing.
What's a woman?
Where is this going?
No, what's a woman?
But what is that?
What is a woman?
Well, I'm sat next to two. Right?
No. What's the definition of a woman?
Well, I don't know. What are you getting at? I don't...
No, just... It's such a simple question. What's a woman?
Is it a biological thing for you, or is it a
well, obviously there are people who are biologically women, and there are people who are transgender women who self-identify as women.
Because what is a woman? Really simple question. It's basic. Keir Starmer
even answered it. Keir Starmer right now. I was going to say, come on.
Can a woman have balls?
Yeah, well, you do.
Can a woman have a penis?
But the point...
No, it's a yes or a no.
It's not, because...
It is.
Because if you were to say...
It really is.
No, it's not, because...
Well, you haven't been able to define what a woman is.
No, because you're trying to take black and white and apply it to the reality of the human existence.
Even Slippery Starmer now says it's an adult human female.
If you were to say that... you would be arguing that transgender women simply don't exist, because clearly someone who is
trans woman, yeah.
A transgender person who has not yet had the opportunity to physically go through the process is obviously going to fit into that category for a period.
Do you think there's any difference between women and trans women?
Well, clearly there's some difference, because one's a trans woman, they're having a slightly different experience. But look, the idea that Ian Wright should sit there and be saying any of those things, your opinion or my opinion, on Radio 2 is completely inappropriate. And I think you're a total hypocrite for trying to call on him to do that when you lampoon Gary Lineker.
I didn't.
You just said that you didn't have the balls to go and say it.
No. I think I made it very clear in my introduction that BBC presenters should actually not be talking about politics whatsoever. But thanks to what Lineker
but then you
and his woke mob did, those ruals have been thrown out the window.
I would never support someone giving their opinions on BBC. Outside of it, it's fine.
You supported Lineker tweeting that stuff.
Yeah, you did
support.
Yeah, and I've always said that if you're not a news or current affairs presenter, then outside of your BBC work, you should be able to give your opinion. But I would never claim that when they are doing their job at the BBC, that they should be doing that.
Well, then they shouldn't have had.
And I listen to Radio 2 all the time. There is no politics on Radio 2.
Well, there just was.
It's a pretty, it's a very Middle England, mundane, entertaining channel.
Take the BBC out of this argument. Men with a high profile should be speaking out on behalf of women wherever they. Never mind the BBC.
Yeah.
Everywhere they should be. They should be acknowledging what is happening to women. That women's spaces are being infringed, their rights are being infringed.
And you know, I've been doing it for a long time on this show. You get a huge amount of incoming as a man doing that, but I think it is absolutely critical that men do not shy away and think this is a women's issue. So, actually, what I would like to hear from Ian Wright, not on the BBC, on another platform, I would actually like to hear what he meant. Don't worry about what people are going to say. Honestly, Ian, don't worry about your people. They're woke. They're pathetic. You're rich enough, you're famous enough to say what you think.
There's lots of men, and I suspect Vernon Kay is one of them, who will never raise their heads above the parapet because they care too much about their careers and where they are and what they're earning.
Politicians like that as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. They will never raise their heads above the... But someone like Wrighty could and should.
Yeah. Well, let's hope he does. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Dame Andrea Jenkins, thank you so much. But coming up, with the NHS in Labour-run Wales seeing a huge 40% rise of patients seeking treatment in England, is this a sign of things to come under a Labour government in Westminster? My superstar panel will return to debate that soon. But next, as this moment where an autistic girl is dragged from her home for calling a female cop a lesbian shocks the nation, have the police lost the moral plot for arresting this teenager for a hate crime? Our very own Neil Oliver live on this next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier with exclusive royal revelation shortly. First, though, Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. And the scandal of a 16-year-old autistic girl who was arrested by cops in her own home for saying a female police officer was a, quote, lesbian like her nana continues to roll on despite the case being dropped. Footage of the incident, filmed by the girl's mum before going viral online, sparked a furious backlash as West Yorkshire police dragged the teenager from an understairs cubbyhole where she was having an emotional meltdown.
She hasn't done anything. She's autistic. I don't care. She's autistic. I know you don't care. I'm telling you, I've got Eunice coming. She's going to be arrested tonight. She's not homophobic. Look what you're clenching your fist. Go away from my teenage daughter.
What is up with you?
There is something wrong with you, mate. She's autistic. She don't like people touching her. She will have a meltdown.
What's your name?
She won't come out. She's got autism. I'm Lisa.
Talk to her so she can come out.
Really upsetting stuff. Among the outrage, spiked online writer Tom Slater wrote, "A police force that prioritises the hurt feelings of its officers over the well-being of a vulnerable young person has lost the moral plot." A review of the arrest by West Yorkshire's police professional standards watchdog is ongoing, but the girl's mother has now pledged to sue the force. So, Neil Oliver, what's your take on this? Was this the police going too far to protect the feelings of a lesbian officer? I mean, it's certainly backfired on them, hasn't it?
Well, absolutely. Not so very long ago, Dan, the police service
And it was a service in this country like the fire service and the ambulance service. The police service existed, was there to look after the people, to keep people safe, to make them feel safe, and I suppose, to round up the baddies, so to speak. But now it would appear that it exists to annoy people, to set people on edge, and to be part of what feels like, seems like, looks like a bigger orchestrated effort to set people at each other's throats, to divide people into bipolar camps as often as possible, to set one against the other. It completely ignores the fact that cities like London are bleeding to death. Teenagers are stabbing each other and bleeding to death in the gutters of the city's streets. And in the last week or so, on TikTok and social media, mobs are helping themselves to the contents, the stock of retail outlets on the high streets. And in the face of that, the police are opting instead to ride out into the suburbs and the housing schemes in their rainbow-painted clown cars to arrest children for perceived wrongthink and wrong speech. Because, apart from anything else, it's the easy option. Rather than face up to and contemplate tackling knives and other weaponry and violence and proper hatred manifest in physical violence, they're tackling how people might be thinking and what they might be saying. Now, that hasn't happened spontaneously, Dan. The police service, I would say, has been corrupted. And I don't know by what, but presumably it involves the way in which it now recruits and the way in which it now trains and indoctrinates its people, and more than anything else, on account of the individuals who are put in place as chief constables and the rest of the superiors. And it would appear that somewhere along the line a decision was taken, that a policy was adopted to ignore violent crime and burglary and rape and all the rest.
It is political, Neil. It is political because I'm told, Tracy Brabin, who's one of the mayors in the area, former Labour MPs, absolutely pushing this type of thing. But what was so shocking about this, Neil, is it was so obvious that the 16-year-old girl wasn't trying to be offensive.
Well, I mean, I suppose we're all bound by the fact that it's not exactly clear what happened there. But as I understand it, all charges have been dropped, and the girl's been not let go, but she's been returned to the family and all the rest of it. And the police have made some kind of mealy-mouthed statement about looking into the way that they pursue and do their business. But what are they doing? What are they doing? Focusing, spending time going after people in their homes for as I understand it, as I know, when you make remarks like that in your home, from your home, no crime has been committed. So that the police were completely out of line. They were acting unlawfully, illegally, in going after that girl in the way that they did, mob-handed, forcing entry into her home in order to effectively kidnap her. They were completely out of line, and they must have known it. And if they didn't know it, then some other egregious wrong is there. But the point is when you look at the wider picture, Dan, when you pull back from this. This is something else that just annoys people, irritates people, makes people, get at each other's throats. The police are demonstrably partisan now. They're myrmidons of the state. They're pushing a narrative and they're bullying other points of view into silence and invisibility.
Yep, no, I couldn't agree more, and it's worrying, Neil Oliver, so you are right to point that out. And both sides of the story, of course, here on GB News. West Yorkshire Police's Assistant Chief Constable Oz Khan said, "We would like to reassure people that we will take on board any lessons to be learned from this incident. We do appreciate the understandable sensitivities around incidents involving young people and neurodiversity, and we are genuinely committed to developing how we respond to those often very challenging situations." Now, thank you so much, Neil Oliver. Coming up, as a major expose from the Sun newspaper reveals Harry and Meghan cannot agree on how to raise their children. Do you believe sources close to the couple who insist their relationship remains strong? My royal masterminds lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier offer exclusive insight on this in the next hour. But first, as the ailing NHS and Labour-run Wales sees a mass exodus of patients to England, will our National Health Service be finished off by slippery Starmer's socialist cabal? That's our big debate next. We'll also have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press in mere moments, and Calvin Mackenzie with his take on how to stop the migrant crisis.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Rain today, clearing overnight, a few showers following, but many places will be fine during Tuesday as low pressure moves into the North Sea, taking its weather fronts with it. However, one occluded feature is just providing some additional rainfall to the northeast of England through the night, some damp weather continuing here. Eventually it becomes light to moderate rain. Showers across western areas, drier towards the southeast with some clear spells, but wherever you are, it's not going to be a cold night. It's 12 to 14 Celsius generally. And it will be a bright start to Tuesday, certainly across southern areas compared with Monday. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the remnants of the cloud and rain clearing from the northeast of England, southeast Scotland first thing, but by mid-morning that's all gone. And then the showers in the west tend to transfer eastwards through the day. The heaviest downpours will be across the central belt and the southern uplands, but elsewhere actually the showers becoming more scattered into the afternoon. A better chance of some sunshine in the south and with light winds feeling much more pleasant. Then we start off Wednesday with a few fog patches in the south and the west, a lot of cloud for Scotland and northeast England, and further showers develop, but most of these showers will be in the north, especially for Scotland, drier towards the south, and this drying up trend continues into Thursday and the start of Friday with rising temperatures.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, according to a government memo, the migrant crisis will last for another 5 years. But instead of normalising the chaos being inflicted on our local communities, should we introduce an emphatic turn-back policy of illegal immigrants? No ifs, no buts. Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie says that delicate diplomacy and relying on mucky Macron is not the answer. He's uncancelled on this later this hour. Also coming up, as patients in the Labour-run Welsh NHS escape to England for treatment, is this a sign of things to come if Slippery Starmer takes power? Plus, 999, what are your pronouns? That's what staff are being trained to ask in emergencies. So is extreme gender ideology getting in the way of life-saving treatment? My superstar panel are preparing to debate a woke NHS in crisis. Tonight, I'm joined by Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Dame Andrea Jenkins. Also on the way, Harry and Meghan appear to have an identical ideological view of the world, but are they on different pages when it comes to parenting? According to an insider, the couple just cannot agree on how to bring up their children. I'll get live reaction to that bombshell revelation from my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. There'll also be a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass name before the night is out. And first front pages, the hot off the press. I'm going to show you them straight after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that police in Northern Ireland say they're confident that the leaked data of officers and staff is now in the hands of dissident Republicans. Earlier, Sinn Féin confirmed that a redacted version of the police data that had been posted on a wall facing its Belfast offices was, they described it, sinister. Last week, the details of 10,000 police officers and staff were published online by mistake. Well, at a news conference this afternoon, Chief Constable Simon Byrne said police are now operating under the assumption that the data will be used to generate fear.
We are now confident that the workforce data set is in the hands of dissident Republicans, and it's therefore a planning assumption that they will use this list to generate fear and uncertainty, as well as intimidating or targeting officers and staff. I won't go into detail for operational reasons, but we are working round the clock to assess this risk and take measures to mitigate it.
A construction worker has died after being injured at Everton's new football stadium being built in Liverpool. Police said the 26-year-old man died in hospital earlier following the incident at the construction site in Bramley-Moore Dock. The stadium's contractor says work has been suspended until further notice. Everton said everyone at the club was heartbroken. The government says it's trying to clarify when officials were made aware of the Legionella outbreak on board the Bibby Stockholm accommodation barge. That's after Dorset Council said Home Office contractors were told traces of the bacteria were detected on the day asylum seekers boarded the barge. All 39 migrants were removed from the vessel on Friday. Downing Street says it expects them to return as soon as possible. Two men have been stabbed in what police are treating as a homophobic attack outside a nightclub in southwest London. They were targeted while standing outside the venue on Clapham High Street last night. Both were treated in hospital and later discharged. Police are still searching for the suspect. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says the incident was abhorrent and there's no place for hate crimes in the capital. Network Rail has released video of dangerous behaviour at level crossings. Take a look at this CCTV compilation if you're watching on TV. It shows one person doing press-ups on the lines. Also dog walkers sitting their pets on the tracks for photographs, and children putting stones on the railway tracks. Nearly 50 cases of misuse have been reported either by train drivers or caught on camera in Worcestershire and the West Midlands so far this year. Network Rail says it's trying to raise awareness and discourage people from risking their lives on the lines. This is GB News across the UK, on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker now by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz first front pages are in. Actually, just one so far. It's the Metro moving targets, and the paper says the 2-week deadline for seeing a cancer specialist is facing the shot with NH bosses branding the target outdated. My superstar panel back with me now, top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. And sticking with the NHS, it has been worshipped, hasn't it, as a kind of religion for so many decades. But I think the congregation is getting smaller. With record-long waiting lists and reckless strikes, a damning new poll over the weekend found that over 80% of Brits think the NHS isn't fit for purpose and that it needs overhaul. That's a result that would have been unheard of even a few years ago. Spare a thought for the Welsh, though, where Labour's chronic mismanagement of the health service has fuelled a shocking 40% rise in residents fleeing to England for treatment. The Welsh Government said that these cross-border arrangements are pre-planned. However, Welsh patients remain 4 times as likely to face a year-long wait than in England. Watch the Health Secretary Steve Barclay try to explain.
In terms of long-term waits, it is the fact that in Wales, you're 4 times more likely to wait over a year for treatment compared to England. That is a stark difference. The longest waits over 2 years have been virtually eliminated in England, as have those of over 18 months, whereas in Wales, it's over 30,000 and over 70,000 waiting either 2 years and 18 months. That is a stark difference between Wales and England.
But a Labour spokesman said patients remember when Labour were last in office, they were treated on time. We had the shortest waiting list and the highest patient satisfaction in history. But the problem is, Carol, look, as the Metro points out, there are big issues in terms of these changing cancer targets.
That's simply not true, because when Labour was in power, the Welsh Health Service was in exactly the same state as it is now. It was catastrophic. Anyway, go on, carry on.
Well, no, indeed. But I was just going to say, obviously, it's a hard thing, isn't it, to say, oh, it's really bad on the Tories, but it's going to be really bad under Labour. But that is the reality. Just look at Wales. You know, this is what they have done.
Keir Starmer has often said that Wales is the blueprint for how he would run the health service here. So look at that now, and that's going to be catastrophic for all of us. And, you know, Keir Starmer and Labour have the brass neck to attack the Tories week after week on their record in the health service. And this record here, the health service in Wales is wrecked not because of what's happened just in the last few years. It was wrecked when Labour were in power. The 13 years Labour...
We've got more doctors and nurses than Labour had pre-2010.
Yeah, it was in a mess way back then. So for Starmer to ever criticise the NHS again... And, you know, what does this do for... I was reading this story and I was thinking, what does this do for our budget here? 40% of Welsh people want to come here to get treated. I don't begrudge them that. However, what does that do to our budget? They've got a budget, and that's bust, clearly. So they're coming here, and we've got a 7.6 million waiting list here. What does that do to our targets? So, you know, and still... You know, Labour...
But Labour's been cutting their budgets in the last decade. Yes. They've cut their NHS budgets while we haven't. NHS England Conservative run have been increasing the budgets.
They won't own up to their mistakes either.
No,
They're still blaming Thatcher for the problems.
Of course they are.
Seriously. And they blame everything on the Tories.
I mean, Benjamin, you've got a big problem here, don't you? Because we look at what Labour has done to the Welsh health system, and that's what's coming under slippery Starmer.
No, I mean,
The highest ever satisfaction in the NHS was 2009-10, the end of 13 years of Labour managing the NHS.
Not in Wales.
Under Labour, at the 2005 election, one of the big issues was people complaining that they were being rushed to see their GP too soon, whereas now you can barely get an appointment within 1 month of calling. Labour had a target of 18 weeks. Now, the target that Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, talks about is trying to get you seen in under a year. I mean, that is absurd. And the truth is that waiting lists were rising from 2015 before any pandemic was on the horizon, and people know that for themselves. It's a mess. But there is a point that's quite aside from party politics, which is that demographics of the country, far more older people who have far more issues that require them to go to hospital, and the care sector have not been accounted for. And so whoever's in government is going to have to try and radically rewrite the rules for that.
But I think you've got the main point, actually, Dan, because it has become a religion. I mean, I went into politics after losing my dad. Appalling care. My mum had appalling care, and when she died at Christmas, you know, she was left in her own soaked urine bed sheets for hours. I had to change her.
And doing that
over
to the
10
mum of an
days.
MP.
Yes, and
I mean...
and it was just a tale of two cities. My sister had amazing care, and to me, you know, when people are, we cannot keep saying that it's so fantastic, the NHS. Yes, it is fantastic, but not everybody who works in the NHS. You get good and bad who works in the NHS, and the trouble is, Dan, in my opinion, the unions have become too strong that they hang on to the dead wood who is not putting the consumer and the vulnerable patient first.
You're not going to lose the job.
I mean, Benjamin, this poll was fascinating to me. The fact that over 80% of Brits think that the NHS isn't fit for purpose and needs an overhaul. I mean, there needs to be a conversation, doesn't there? Well, no matter who ends up in government.
Look, the NHS isn't fit for purpose at the moment, right? That's what the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has said that for quite some time. But what I want to ask...
wouldn't he?
What I want to ask Andrew, as you know, a sitting Tory MP, where are these 40 hospitals you promised?
Well, I mean, look at our fabulous Leeds one. It's got the upgrades going on.
But where are they? You know, that was a pledge. That was an election
but also,
pledge.
What about COVID? What about all the money we put into that? What about the war with Ukraine and Russia? These other things come up, unfortunately. But we have still put more investment into the NHS than Labour ever did.
With all of that, the NHS in this country is the 6th best funded in all the OECD
It's not working,
countries.
Carol. No. It's not working.
It shouldn't be about money, though. It should be about outcomes.
So it isn't money. It's not that money's being cut.
We need to have some conversations that most people in this country have not been prepared to have on both sides of the aisle for a very long time, including, by the way, and this always makes me very unpopular, but I'm going to keep saying it, free GP appointments for especially rich people. They need to go.
They do,
It is not working out. And, of course, Rishi Sunak actually said there should be a charge for people who miss their GP appointment. And he immediately rode back once he was in power. Now, look, the mass exodus of top BBC talent continued yesterday as emotional Helen Skelton abruptly quit her presenting role on Radio 5's Sunday morning show. Watch.
You're emotional because I'm leaving.
I am.
Well, thanks.
How are you feeling?
I'm not all right about it. But, you know, needs must. The juggle is real.
Yeah, the juggle is real.
An 8-year-old with a sideline needs me.
Can I ask Lloyd a question, or do you want to just continue to talk about you?
We've done me.
That was odd. That was very odd. In their own statement, the Beeb said that Skelton's departure has nothing to do with any issue other than those outlined in her sign-off. However, earlier this month, she faced the wrath of BBC bosses due to plugging clothes and shoe brands on her Instagram after presenting. I don't know about this. I mean, maybe we should welcome the BBC taking their impartiality rules seriously. But how does that fit when they allow Gary Lineker to do whatever he wants on social media, including, by the way, comparing Home Office immigration policy to Nazi Germany? So it feels to me like it's one rule for Lineker and another rule for the little people at the BBC. Not that Helen Skelton's a little person. She's good, actually. She'll do better outside the BBC. Dame Andrea Jenkins, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, imagine you dial 999 because a family member has fallen ill, only to be asked for your preferred pronouns. Well, that's the nonsense being peddled by some woke NHS call centres. My superstar panel will return to debate whether health leaders are more obsessed with PC claptrap than doing their jobs. First, though, a major expose has revealed Harry and Meghan cannot agree on how to raise their children or how to navigate the Duke's mounting legal cases. So do you believe sources close to the Sussexes who say their relationship remains strong? Exclusive information coming from my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Don't go anywhere.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Time for our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And at the weekend, Prince Harry took time away from his domestic duties in Montecito, travelling to Singapore to take part in a charity polo match. And the lattice trip coincided with a bombshell report from The Sun newspaper revealing that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex can't agree on how to bring up their children, 4-year-old Archie and 2-year-old Lilibet. According to an insider, Harry is obsessed with providing his kids with the security and privacy that he feels that he never had growing up, while Meghan wants to raise them more openly in California. The source also added that Meghan's patience has been tested over Harry's numerous court battles with the British press, telling The Sun Meghan would love to be done with all the legal stuff, but she's still supportive of him as she knows how important it is to him, but she is ready to move on. However, the newspaper still insisted that the marriage was, quote, strong. So, Lady C, this was really interesting new information from The Sun. Are you hearing that the marriage remains strong despite clearly 2 big rifts? 1 over how they raise their kids, and 2 over Harry's obsession with taking down the British media and a whole series of legal actions?
Well, my understanding is that the marriage is very troubled.
but that doesn't mean that it's going to collapse in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I have been told by very many reliable sources that the marriage is troubled. And you only need to see that, obviously, if they can't even agree on how to bring up the children, and Harry's paranoia is a huge problem. It was a huge problem for his previous girlfriends. It's a huge problem developing for Meghan. And, you can't bring children up divorced from reality and divorced from the world because you have a paranoid fear of the press and of anything going wrong. It's just insane. So my understanding is the marriage is still very awkward, let's put it that way. But that doesn't mean they're going to get divorced in the next 3 weeks or 3 months.
Phil, what you're hearing, though, is a bit more in line with the Sun reporting, which is that there might be a few disagreements, but overall you think the marriage is OK?
Yeah, good evening, Dan. I've been saying for some time that I think the marriage is not as bad as people are making out, even though they seem to be leading sort of pretty separate lives. Lady C's absolutely right. I mean, he is paranoid about security, and they do seem to be a bit sort of cooped up there, don't they? And you don't get the impression that the kids, Archie and Lily, are mixing with other children. And you can't live your whole life like that. I mean, I think it'd be quite a good idea if they took them to the Invictus Games, actually. I mean, after all, Harry and William both went on royal tours when they were very young. So maybe they should get, send a message out that the marriage is good, the kids are out and about. But you can't live your life cooped up like that. And I can understand Meghan wanting to have a sort of more freewheeling Californian lifestyle. But he is absolutely terrified that something might happen to them. So I don't think they can go on like that. I mean, if they did come over to the Invictus Games, obviously it would have been fantastic. They could have popped in to see their cousins, but of course that's not going to happen.
That's certainly not going to happen. Look, fascinating new poll from the Mail on Sunday over the weekend, Lady C, shows that 52% of Brits would support Prince Harry being removed from the order of succession to prevent him ever becoming king. What's your take on it, Lady C? Because, I mean, that would be a dramatic move.
Well, I think if Harry were to become king, it would be the end of the monarchy. I cannot think that there are many people I know who are all avowed monarchists who would actually wish to have King Henry IX, because he is too disturbed, he is too disturbing, she is totally inadequate. I mean, it would be Archie Bunker in Buckingham Palace with his parent, and this. It would be no. I think it would be a good idea if Harry could renounce his rights of succession to the throne for himself and those 2 children. I think that would.
You don't think the king will ever do that?
No,
the king doesn't have to do it.
OK, because you would say he should do it. OK. But why would he do that, Phil? Because at the end of the day, he wants to be king, right? He still wants to be king.
Yeah, I mean, the late Queen was absolutely terrified about this, wasn't she? To the extent that she asked Prince William to stop flying his family in helicopters because she thought that if the family was wiped out, God forbid, Harry would be in line to the throne. There is one major problem, of course, and that's if we remove Harry and his children, who's next in line? The Duke of York. So it's never easy with these line of successions. I mean, we've got all sorts of strange people still in the line of succession. Marina Mowat, who was the black sheep of the royal family, she's about 61st in line. Peter Phillips might have lost his line of succession place, but when he married Autumn, because she was a Catholic, but she gave up her religion and went into the Anglican faith. So people like staying in the line of succession. It's a kind of status symbol. But it is a bit worrying when you think about it that Harry's just, that close. And I think Lady C is right. The idea of him coming back and being king and Meghan queen, I'm sure she'd leap at it, Meghan. I'm sure she'd love it. But Lady C is right. You count the end of the monarchy at the end of that.
Well, Meghan's much more focused on the bank balance at the moment, isn't she? Did you see her being conveniently packed wearing a new health gadget on her wrist over the weekend, which is said to combat stress? At the same time, Lady C, we're learning that she might relaunch her lifestyle blog, The Tig. What's going on here?
Well, she needs to earn money, and that seems to be the most valuable way of earning money. But you do know, Dan, that what she was doing was visiting a marriage counselling office, all bundled up in winter clothes in 75-degree weather. And the stress of going to see the marriage counsellor was obviously quite profound.
I mean, Phil, I guess Phil, I guess I should say we don't know for sure why she was in that building, Phil.
No, but I think we know for sure why she lifted her arm. I've actually got my own here, Dan. It looks a bit like a beer mat, suspiciously, but. No, she was clearly sort of lifting her arm up to be photographed. The company that make these things, Newcom, I think they're already advertising with a picture of her on it. So clearly she's got a tie-up, and as you say, it's going to be a perfect sort of stuff for her to advertise on the TIG, which she's now apparently taken all the registration documents and everything she's signed to do that. So I'm sure that's going to happen soon, that she'll reopen that and have a sort of lifestyle blog like Gwyneth Paltrow. That's where the money could well be for her, and as Lady C says, she's got to make a living.
Brilliant exclusive insights as ever from our Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Thank you both. We'll speak later in the week. But Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie is on standby to let rip at migrant gangs and the French. First, though, the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Rain today, clearing overnight, a few showers following, but many places will be fine. During Tuesday, as low pressure moves into the North Sea, taking its weather fronts with it. However, one occluded feature is just providing some additional rainfall to the northeast of England through the night. Some damp weather continuing here. Eventually it becomes light to moderate rain. Showers across western areas, drier towards the southeast with some clear spells, but wherever you are, it's not going to be a cold night. It's 12 to 14 Celsius generally. And it will be a bright start to Tuesday, certainly across southern areas compared with Monday. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the remnants of the cloud and rain clearing from the northeast of England, southeast Scotland first thing, but by mid-morning that's all gone. And then the showers in the west tend to transfer eastwards through the day. The heaviest downpours will be across the central belt and the southern uplands, but elsewhere actually the showers becoming more scattered into the afternoon. A better chance of some sunshine in the south and with light winds feeling much more pleasant. Then we start off Wednesday with a few fog patches in the south and the west, a lot of cloud for Scotland and northeast England, and further showers develop. But most of these showers will be in the north, especially for Scotland, drier towards the south, and this drying up trend continues into Thursday and the start of Friday with rising temperatures.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up in Uncancelled Forget, Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats imminently. A leaked Home Office memo says we're preparing to deal with the migrant crisis for the next 5 years. So do we need to now ignore international critics and physically turn the boats away? Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie thinks so. He's pointing to no-nonsense Greece as a country we should copy. He'll explain why soon. Next, though, in the media buzz, they should be focusing on Britain's health. So why are 999 call centres and NHS hospital staff obsessing about patient and colleagues' pronouns? My superstar panel return to debate the gender agenda next, and we'll have more of tomorrow's newspapers hot off the press. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion. We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's News Tonight. In our Media Buzzer, more front pages are in. OK, straight to the Daily Mirror, which leads tonight on killer dog crisis. Another day, another attack. And the paper is reporting on 5-year-old Farah Lee Nichols, whose cheek was ripped open after she was attacked by a bully-type dog. The Daily Mail reports that a top police boss has told parents to get a grip of TikTok yobs. Donna Jones, the new chairman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, issued a stern warning as she revealed teenagers in Southampton took paracetamol over the weekend just to see who could stay in hospital the longest. Honestly, TikTok has a lot to answer for, especially given this is a Chinese government app, which I don't even think any of us should be on, if I'm completely honest. But my superstar panel return now. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. Now, logic would tell you, right, that in any emergency 999 call, time is severely of the essence. But a shocking Daily Mail report has uncovered that woke ideology could be delaying care, as some NHS operators are told to ask callers their preferred pronouns to avoid misgendering them. The paper also revealed that the controversial LGBT charity Stonewall is behind as many as 30 gender policies in NHS trusts. And a source close to Health Secretary Steve Barclay said he was appalled that some health bosses were engaged in woke virtue signalling. I mean, Carol Malone, I genuinely think this has gone too far now. If you are on a 999 call, every second counts. Who cares if you're misgendered? If someone called me madam, I wouldn't be offended. I just want the ambulance,
I read this
OK?
story today and I wanted to punch the wall. I mean, this is, this has gone nuts now. When you are making that kind of call, as you've just said, time is of the essence. You have, if you said to an elderly person having a heart attack, what's your pronoun? They wouldn't know what you were talking about. They wouldn't have a clue. And those seconds couldn't mean the difference between life and death. I just think, identity politics has no place in healthcare, and yet, as you just mentioned,
it's totally in it, all of it now.
It has no place. But Stonewall are now. They get paid thousands a year by not just the NHS, where they're advising 30 trusts. They get paid thousands a year from companies, institutions, to have advice on diversity. What they're doing is not about diversity or equality. It's the total opposite of that. They're actually causing divisions between them. They're creating anger and resentment amongst people. And I just think, it's like... It's not about diversity. It's about social re-engineering. Stonewall are trying to tell people how they should think, and if you don't think like that, they will try and destroy you,
But
and
Benjamin,
it's not on.
Stonewall should be booted out, shouldn't they, of all of these government organisations like the NHS?
No, and I think, trying to claim that the problems with the health service, the 7.6 million people on a waiting list, is because, people are checking whether they're speaking to a sir or madam.
No, we're not saying that.
And also,
what do
by the
you
way...
think about N999 stuff being asked to ask their callers for their preferred pronouns? Surely that should be at the bottom of the priority list. Even you could have.
I mean, I'd love to hear a call to see what that actually means in reality. I think, this isn't necessarily an LGBT thing at all. Some people have accents, have voices that get misconstrued, and that really annoys some people. So it's a matter of respect.
Not on a 999 call.
But I mean, I'm just not willing to believe that the first question they're asking is that, and not is the patient breathing, which is the first question.
It's an official guide.
But look,
madam.
When it comes to Stonewall, the issues that they've advised on are about LGBT healthcare. So that could be maybe a trans person's healthcare. It could be HIV, which is a bit more common among gay men. Those are the kind of things that are important healthcare aspects. And you should have a group like Stonewall advising on those issues.
Can we talk about the things, how they are trying to cancel women? They literally are... They're saying that mothers should be called mothers. They should be called birthing people. They're saying that breastfeeding...
That's not true.
Yeah, well,
it's not true. It's not true because...
Yes, it is.
It's not true because
Andrea,
they said that transgender people might want that to be used if they're a trans parent.
They have to be called birthing people so as not to offend the transgender. True. Well, this is what I'm reading that Stonewall have done.
I've read it in the Telegraph as well.
I've read it everywhere.
They said that a trans person who might have got pregnant should be referred to that. Not that you, for example, should be referred to that.
Can we come back to the 999 situation? Because we actually have the guidance here. Okay. This isn't black and white. This isn't something that's been made up. This is a guide to 999 stuff. Dropping the gendered terms such as sir or madam avoids the accidental misgendering. Asking someone's pronoun is a non-intrusive way to determine gender. Now, that is not something you should be doing on a 999 emergency call.
As you said, Dan, and as Carol rightly said, every second counts. It could endanger lives with ridiculous questions like this. But what really angers myself, Dan, is the fact that a pressure group like Stonewall has actually got disproportionate influence on policy, but without the accountability. Politicians have the accountability. Ministers do. We're held to account, but they aren't, and that is wrong. We should not allow these pressure groups to take over our policies.
It's incredible that women are being put at risk because of this very small but very loud pressure group. There was a story in the papers at the weekend that now women who temporarily identify as trans women can have treatment on a woman's ward. So that means a bloke can put a dress on and put a wig on, put a bit of lippy on, and go and get treated in a woman's ward. He doesn't have to live as a trans
It's so important that healthcare recognises these issues.
But no, it isn't. You don't put a bloke in a woman's ward. You just don't.
The Conservative peer, Ian Duncan, has written very movingly about how his sibling, who was transgender, had their cancer missed because the doctors failed to ask about those details. They failed to check because they didn't realise they'd been born a woman, and that meant they found the cancer late and his sibling died.
Benjamin,
that's what happens when you don't.
We've obviously been very harsh on Stonewall. What is the positive that they bring into the NHS?
Well, they do a huge amount. If you're talking about LGBT patients and staff, to have appropriate ways to treat them, for people to be aware of their healthcare issues. If someone's transgender, that obviously there's maybe not the health complications that a doctor expects on looking at them, and it's important they know how to deal with that.
It's just odd to me. Also, as a gay man, I feel absolutely no need to be treated any differently from anyone.
Well, except that a prime example, and this is something I worked on during COVID, is that there are lots of people who are in the closet as gay men and they've contracted HIV, and health professionals need to know how to delicately deal with those issues and to assess them, because you have people that are very scared to admit them, to tell new doctors that. Those are the kind of areas where this is important.
Every institution should withdraw from Stonewall's Diversity Champions programme.
And
lots already have. BBC have, Ofcom have, what's the other organisation? I've forgotten. But anyway, 3 massive organisations have withdrawn already. And everyone should, because this is actually against women.
Now, look, the backlash against Sadiq Khan's highly controversial low-emission scheme boiled over at the weekend as a clandestine anti-ULEZ group, which has vowed to destroy every ULEZ camera, carried out their latest action. This clip, captured by an onlooker, who was dining, by the way, shows a masked Blade Runner acting alone, brazenly sabotaging 2 monitors with a tree lopper. Watch. And guess what? In Sadiq Khan's lawless London, there's absolutely nothing the failed mayor will be able to do about that. Dame Andrea Jenkins, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, hear the extraordinary story of one of the last known Royal Navy veterans who served in Dunkirk, who sadly now died. That's when we crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But next, in Uncancelled, Rishi Sunak's been promising to stop the boats swiftly, but a leaked Home Office memo says we're going to be accommodating illegal migrants for the next 5 years at least. So is it time we took a leaf from the Greeks' book and started physically turning the boats away in the water? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie thinks so. He's riled and ready on this. Don't go anywhere, because Calvin McKenzie is up in just 2 minutes' time.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie, uncancelled now. And you know this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And if you hope the migrant crisis would be solved before the next general election, think again. Despite Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats, a leaked government memo reveals Channel arrivals are anticipated for another 5 years, sparking more chaos for local communities who live near proposed new migrant accommodation sites. So Calvin reckons we should mimic the Greek Navy by intercepting boats in the water and turning them back, which migrant charities have slammed over recent years for breaking international law. But Calvin, I can't understand. I've really looked closely into this, and there are ways for to implement a totally legal and I believe a totally moral turn-back policy. And yeah, the globalist organisations are going to be furious, the human rights charities are going to be furious, but we've got to do it now, don't we?
Yes, well, the truth is they believe in open borders anyway. They don't even like the idea of a passport. But the first point you made there about the government, a 5-year... Do you realise at this rate that would be another 300,000 to 400,000 people? I mean, it would be 5 times the size of Durham, if anybody is in Durham right now. So... Why is it we have a government or any government, because it'll be the same under Labour. You know? I mean, it may well be worse. It's hard to believe it'll be worse, right? Why is it that something that's going to happen for the next 5 years, not everybody's up in arms, every politician shouting? If this were inflation, we'd have everybody in the world demanding that, quotes, something would be done. They don't want to do the two things that we could do it. One, let's push them back. The Greeks haven't run into any problems at all. In fact, their government has never been more popular. I mean, in Greece, a government falls every 27 seconds, right? So, A, they're popular, and B, it would be the right thing to do. And see, if they don't do it, there is only one alternative, which I noticed that even Starmer alluded to, because he was claiming that the government hadn't got to grips with the smugglers. Hello, welcome to Kelv's world. Why don't we actually take on the smugglers? What is the point of having the SBS? What is the point of having the SAS? These people are bloody clever. That boat the other day where the people drowned, there were 60 people on there. They're paying somewhere between 3 and 5 grand. That is 300,000
And by
quid.
the way, they put lots of them on without life.
They don't give a stuff.
Which shows exactly what sort of people.
So £300,000 a pop. They will be doing it for as long as they can. There's only one thing that's going to stop them. Hello, here comes the SAS coming around the corner. At that, they'll start.
So Sunak needs to be
about
on a wartime footing.
But why doesn't he do it? He's got nothing to lose. He's 18 points behind. He's 28 points behind. He's 58 points behind.
He knows he's losing. He's trying to lose gracefully. But it's wrong. It's wrong. But that is the reality, because there's so much he could do and he's not doing it. Now, look, breaking tonight, you've got new information about a new route.
The Telegraph says that the Albanians have given up trying to come over on the boats. That's what Sunak keeps on saying. Look, aren't we a triumph? That used to cost them 3 grand. They're now taking another smuggling route, which is go from Santander on the ferry and end up in Portsmouth or Poole Harbour, and they're prepared to pay 15,000 to go. You'd have thought if they had 15,000 quid with the state of our economy, the last place you would come to was the UK. I could understand taking the longboat across the Atlantic, but
but they're coming here to join criminal networks.
They are coming here to run cannabis farms.
Yes.
So if you're smoking dope,
prostitution rings. I mean, that's what's going on here. Let's just be honest about what the Albanians are coming over for.
Yeah, right. So if you're smoking,
is why they pay the 15.
You're smoking dope. Right, what you're doing is probably helping the Albanians, so you're doing 2 things wrong at the same time, and probably damaging your health as well. That was a health warning, just in case anybody's worried.
little health warning from Governor McKenzie. Now, look, on a lighter note, what do you make of this new Scouts woke style guide that condemns traditional terms, including girl guides, and calls for post-men to be called postal workers, stressing that people should not presume men are the default?
Well, I understand why you might be getting angry about it. Honestly, of all the things in the world, I get steaming mad about it. If a girl guides want to be called guides and postmen want to be called postal workers, honestly, I know you may think I've become a dangerous liberal during this conversation, but I don't get upset about it, I'll be honest.
Think it's not what everyone's focus should be. We were talking earlier about the NHS now telling 999 operators to ask the preferred pronouns of what? The person who's just had a bloody heart attack? I mean, this is ludicrous.
I totally agree. And if it's, let's say the baby is to be due, could it be, well, ask Mr Starmer, could it be that that's a woman on the line who's having the baby? It is ridiculous. So there are examples of it being ridiculous. The guides and the postal workers do not aggravate me.
See, I'm really thinking about the pronoun thing at the moment. I'm thinking long and hard about it, and I know a lot of people who I respect, including Nana Acquair and Meghan Kelly, have made the decision to say, I'm not doing the preferred pronouns thing anymore, because we see what happens with Sam Smith, someone who is obviously a man, someone who I like, actually, you know, good guy, but it's been posted all the time referring to Sam Smith as a they. It is butchering the English language. We all know it's ludicrous, and I'm thinking very hard that maybe quite soon I'm just not going to be accepting these preferred
hold on a
pronouns.
second. Don't you think that Sam Smith made a bloody fool of himself by referring to Fisher them? Don't you think that actually people become mad when they embrace it
single
too far.
newspaper, every single website in the world, doesn't matter if these newspapers or websites are on the left or the right, they will refer to Sam Smith as they. And I really think we have to start pushing back against this now.
I think you know, I would embrace that. Unfortunately, I think there's a tidal wave of the stuff, and I just wonder whether we're just, you know, shouting down an empty valley, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. I think for me, though, surely you understand this as a former newspaper editor. It butchers the language. You know, everything looks so ugly. No, you're not a they, you're a he. That is the point. And, yeah, this
You
is
should have your own show, have you ever thought?
Might try it one day. Calvin McKenzie, Uncancelled, will speak later in the week. Thank you so much, Calvin. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And my superstar panel return, Carol Malone. Who are you nominating for your Greatest Britain tonight?
Every week we talk about Greatest Britons. Lawrence Churcher is one of our greatest ever Britons. Lawrence, who died in his care home in Farnham a few days ago, just a bit short of his 103rd birthday. He was a hero in the truest sense of the word. He actually he's the last surviving veteran of Dunkirk. He fought in the war. He was fighting on D-Day, ended his tenure in the Far East. An emotional Facebook post today from a charity called Project 71 said, "Stand down, Lawrence, your duty is done. It's been an honour to have known you. It's been an honour for us all to have had this man on our side at a time history was being made." Thank you, Lawrence. Rest in peace.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I feel so sad.
Me too.
That we are losing this generation.
Me too.
It's utterly heartbreaking. But we're very lucky that we actually got to live alongside them. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, mine is Sir Chris Bryant for his suggestion that the rules that apply to councillors, that if you don't turn up to a meeting for 6 months, you're struck off, should apply to members of Parliament. Specifically, you may recall a woman called Nadine Dorries, who hasn't bothered to turn up to do her job in well over a year and is on about day 70 of her immediate resignation.
Vile little troll. Do you agree with him that I'm a nutcase? Or are you going to plead the fifth on?
Do you want the answer or not?
No, hold it. Dave Andrew Jenkins, your nominee.
It's got to be the ultimate Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, who actually also, with her comments, has foretold the future of what we're going through today. And I just wish Prime Ministers was continue to be made in her mould.
Well, actually, let's have a little look at the moment where I played a bit of Thatcher to kick off the show tonight.
When you cannot return illegal immigrants to their country of origin, then he is proposing international chaos.
Here. But look, of course, tonight's Greatest Britain, Lawrence Churcher, the last known Royal Navy Dunkirk veteran, died at the age of 102, and a beautiful tribute by Carol. Who is your Union Jackass, Carol, though? Moving on.
OK, it's Stonewall, which has managed to infiltrate every company, every business. Now it's infiltrated our healthcare system in the worst possible ways. What Stonewall is doing isn't inclusive, it's divisive, and it's causing anger and resentments toward the very community it says it wants to protect.
Which you totally disagree with, Benjamin?
Yeah, I mean, as someone in that community, I think they do exceptional work. So I should have made them my Greatest Britain. But my Union Jackass is Theresa Villiers, the Conservative MP and former Environment Secretary, who it emerged she had £70,000 of shares in oil companies that she forgot to declare while serving as Environment Secretary. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't forget about £70,000 that I've got, especially when it's my job to make decisions about those companies.
Well, Andrea, you've been through that process as a minister. I mean, could it have been a genuine mistake?
Look, Theresa, she's fantastic. She's, I got on very well with her as a colleague. I mean, mistakes can happen, but yeah.
Do you have £70,000 of shares you've forgotten about?
I wish I had a spare 70 grand full stop.
Who's your Union Jackass,
I have to say Sue Gray, who was allegedly hiding the fact of how badly run Labour-run Wales NHS is. Yet again, she's proven to make a mockery of the impartiality of the civil service when she was there. And I think maybe her next job should be with the BBC, Dan.
Yeah, so what did she actually do here?
She's meant to have hidden the fact that people was coming over to England with the stats that you mentioned earlier.
The problem is, I don't know about you, I can't trust a thing Sue Gray did in the civil service, given that we know she always had this plan.
Can I just point out that before the Keir Starmer thing happened, Conservative MPs, DUP, Arlene Foster, everyone else talked of what an exceptional civil servant Sue Gray was. Well, I think this has got a lot more
until she led the Boris Johnson Partygate witch hunt, right, Andrea?
Oh, completely, yeah. And a mask has slipped now, and she should not have been having conversations with Starmer.
Well, look, I've met Sue Gray, and I think she's an exceptional public servant.
Oh, yeah, you agree with her on everything.
She was obviously preparing to cross over to Labour when this was going on.
Oh, look, I'm going to have to go with Sue Gray, actually, Andrea Jenkins' nomination. She is tonight's Union Jack, as she should always have been a member of the Labour Party and working for Keir Starmer. Although, actually, let's be honest, most of the civil service are probably in that same camp. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Dame Andrea Jenkins, thank you so much. Thank you for your company tonight. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. when I will be joined by Nigel Farage and Tom Bauer. Next up, though, it's Headliners. Good night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Rain today, clearing overnight, a few showers following, but many places will be fine during Tuesday as low pressure moves into the North Sea, taking its weather fronts with it. However, one occluded feature is just providing some additional rainfall to the northeast of England through the night, some damp weather continuing here. Eventually it becomes light to moderate rain. Showers across western areas, drier towards the southeast with some clear spells, but wherever you are, it's not going to be a cold night. It's 12 to 14 Celsius generally. And it will be a bright start to Tuesday, certainly across southern areas compared with Monday. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the remnants of the cloud and rain clearing from the northeast of England, southeast Scotland first thing, but by mid-morning that's all gone. And then the showers in the west tend to transfer eastwards through the day. The heaviest downpours will be across the central belt and the southern uplands, but elsewhere actually the showers becoming more scattered into the afternoon. A better chance of some sunshine in the south and with light winds feeling much more pleasant. Then we start off Wednesday with a few fog patches in the south and the west, a lot of cloud for Scotland and northeast England, and further showers develop, but most of these showers will be in the north, especially for Scotland, drier towards the south, and this drying up trend continues into Thursday and the start of Friday with rising temperatures.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.